Port Charles had been living under a cloud of suspicion for weeks, and most of it traced back to Sidwell. His charm, wealth, and influence had convinced many people that he was simply a powerful businessman with strong opinions. But Sonny Corinthos saw something different. He noticed the quiet moves Sidwell made behind the scenes, the subtle pressure on city officials, the whispered conversations that stopped when others entered the room, and the way people around him suddenly changed their stories. Sonny didn't confront Sidwell directly. Instead, he did what he always does best. He watched, waited, and built a careful plan. Late one evening at the Metro Court, Sonny met privately with Brick. Together, they reviewed information that Brick had gathered over several weeks. Financial records, private meetings, and suspicious connections began to form a pattern that was too serious to ignore. Sidwell wasn't just influencing Port Charles, he was trying to quietly control it. Meanwhile, Laura started noticing unusual resistance whenever she pushed for certain city decisions. Important proposals were being delayed without clear reasons. Jordan also received tips that some local businesses were being pressured to cooperate with unfamiliar demands. None of it made sense at first, until Sonny shared what he had learned. They realized Sidwell had been building alliances in silence, using money and influence to steer things in his favor while keeping his public image spotless. Sonny's plan was simple but bold. Instead of accusing Sidwell privately, he decided to reveal the truth in a way no one could deny. During a high-profile charity gala at the Metro Court, attended by nearly everyone important in Port Charles, Sonny made his move. As Sidwell confidently mingled with guests, Sonny stepped forward and asked for everyone's attention. With Laura and Jordan standing nearby, Sonny calmly presented documented evidence showing Sidwell's hidden dealings and manipulative strategies. The room fell silent. Sidwell tried to defend himself, but the information was clear and undeniable. Faces in the crowd shifted from admiration to disbelief. People who once trusted Sidwell began to question everything they thought they knew about him. Laura spoke next, expressing how disappointed she was that someone had tried to quietly influence the future of their city. Jordan confirmed that an official investigation would begin immediately. For the first time, Sidwell's confident mask slipped. He realized that Sonny had outmaneuvered him without raising suspicion, exposing the truth in front of the entire community. The morning after the gala, Port Charles felt different. Conversations buzzed in every corner of Kelly's, the Metro Court lobby, and even the hospital corridors. People replayed the previous night in their minds, still trying to process how someone as polished as Sidwell had been quietly pulling strings for so long. At the mayor's office, Laura wasted no time. She met with Jordan and a small team of trusted officials to begin reviewing the evidence Sonny had shared. What shocked them most was how far Sidwell's reach extended. It wasn't just city proposals. There were attempts to influence zoning decisions, charity funding, and even media coverage. Jordan's expression hardened as she flipped through the documents. He didn't just want influence, he wanted control, she said quietly. Meanwhile, Sidwell stayed out of public view. Calls to his office went unanswered. Rumors spread that some of his closest associates were suddenly distancing themselves, unwilling to be tied to the unfolding situation. At Pizzulo's, Sonny sat with Jason and Brick in a back booth. He wasn't celebrating. If anything, he looked thoughtful. "This isn't over," Sonny said calmly. "A man like Sidwell doesn't make moves this big without a backup plan." Brick nodded. "I'm still digging. There are pieces we haven't seen yet." Jason agreed. "He's quiet right now. That's what worries me." Across town, Nina and Carly found themselves in an unusual moment of agreement. Both women admitted they had been fooled by Sidwell's smooth talk and generous donations. Carly shook her head. "He played the long game. If Sonny hadn't noticed, we might never have known." Later that afternoon, Laura received a surprise visitor. Sidwell walked into her office, composed but clearly strained. He didn't argue or deny anything this time. Instead, he asked for a chance to speak. He claimed his actions were meant to protect the city from poor leadership decisions, insisting he believed his influence would create a better future for Port Charles. Laura listened but remained firm. "You don't protect a city by taking away its voice," she replied. Sidwell left without another word, but his calm exit only added to the tension in the air. That evening, Sonny stood on the pier overlooking the harbor, deep in thought. Jason joined him. "You did the right thing," Jason said. Sonny nodded slowly. "Maybe, but I've learned something. Sidwell wasn't working alone." Jason looked at him carefully. "You think someone else is involved?" Sonny's eyes stayed fixed on the water. "I know it." Back at the Metro Court, a mysterious phone call came into Sidwell's private line. He answered quietly, his voice low. It didn't go as planned. A pause. Then his expression shifted from frustration to uneasy understanding. "You're right," Sidwell replied. "Now we move to the next phase." As he hung up, one thing became clear. The truth Sonny exposed was only the surface. Something bigger was still hiding in the shadows of Port Charles, and Sidwell was just one part of a much larger plan. As the gala ended in shock and whispers, Sonny stepped aside, knowing he had done what needed to be done without chaos or confrontation. Port Charles finally saw Sidwell for who he really was, a man who tried to control the city from the shadows. And as word spread through town the next morning, everyone understood one thing clearly. Sonny Corinthos once again protected Port Charles, not with force, but with patience, strategy,
Night settled over
and
Port
truth.
Charles, but the sense of unease only grew stronger. Jordan stayed late at the PCPD, reviewing new reports that had started coming in since the gala. A few business owners had finally come forward, admitting they'd been pressured into quiet agreements they didn't fully understand. Each story followed the same pattern: polite meetings, generous offers, and subtle reminders that refusing could make life complicated. Jordan circled one name that appeared more than once, a consulting firm no one in town had paid attention to before. It had handled paperwork, permits, and financial routing for several of Sidwell's projects. She picked up the phone and called Laura. "We may have found the bridge between Sidwell and whoever else is involved." Across town, Sonny invited Laura and Jordan to his office for a private discussion. Brick projected files onto a screen as Jason stood nearby, arms folded. "This firm," Brick explained, "isn't local. It's been moving through different cities for years. Same pattern: quiet influence, political pressure, financial leverage. Then they disappear before anyone notices." Laura's face tightened. "You're saying Port Charles isn't the first place this has happened?" "No," Sonny replied. "We're just the first place where someone caught it in time." Meanwhile, Sidwell sat alone in his darkened living room, staring at his phone. The confident man everyone once knew seemed to be unraveling. He replayed Sonny's words from the gala over and over in his head. For the first time, Sidwell realized he had underestimated the people of Port Charles. He thought he could guide events from behind the curtain. Instead, he had been pulled into the spotlight. A knock at his door startled him. When he opened it, he wasn't prepared for who stood there. It was someone well known in Port Charles, someone with a spotless reputation and deep ties to the community. Their expression was calm but urgent. "You let this get exposed," the visitor said quietly. "Now we're all at risk." Sidwell's eyes widened. Sonny moved faster than expected. "That doesn't matter," the person replied. "What matters is fixing it before everything unravels." Back at the pier, Sonny received a text from Brick. "You were right. There's another name connected to the firm, someone close to home." Sonny read the message twice, his jaw tightening. Jason watched his reaction. "Who is it?" Sonny didn't answer right away. His mind raced through faces, memories, and recent behavior that suddenly looked different. Finally, he spoke. "It's someone we trust." The realization hit hard. This wasn't just about power and control anymore. This was about betrayal from within. As Sonny and Jason headed back toward town, a storm began to roll in over the harbor, lightning flickering across the sky. Port Charles was about to face a truth far more unsettling than Sidwell's hidden agenda, the discovery that one of their own had been quietly helping him all along. Thunder rolled across the harbor as Sonny and Jason hurried back toward town.
The air felt charged, like Port Charles itself was bracing for impact. Inside Sonny's office, Brick had the files ready. Laura and Jordan were already there, tension written across their faces. No one spoke at first. They could all see from Sonny's expression that this wasn't just another discovery. Brick tapped a key, and a name appeared on the screen. A name everyone in the room knew well. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain hitting the windows. Laura slowly sat down. This can't be right. Jordan leaned closer to the screen, scanning the connections, the transactions, the quiet meetings that now painted a very different picture. "The evidence lines up," she said carefully. "Dates, locations, communications. This isn't a mistake." Jason looked at Sonny. "How long?" Sonny's voice was low, long enough to do real damage. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Sidwell had done. Sidwell was an outsider. This person was part of Port Charles, someone who had shared meals, conversations, and trust with all of them. Laura's first instinct was disbelief. "We need to talk to them before this goes any further. If there's an explanation, we need to hear it." Jordan agreed, but carefully. If they realize what we know, they could warn Sidwell's partner. Meanwhile, that very person sat in a quiet room across town, staring at their phone as messages from Sidwell went unanswered. They had always convinced themselves they were helping guide the city in the right direction, that small compromises were worth the bigger outcome. Now they weren't so sure. The storm outside mirrored the storm in their mind. Back at the PCPD, Jordan began preparing a discreet approach. No public accusations, no sudden moves. She wanted the truth without tipping off anyone else involved. Sonny stood by the window, watching the lightning streak across the sky. "I never thought it would be them," he admitted. Jason nodded. "That's why it worked." Late that night, Laura made a quiet visit to the person's home. She didn't come as mayor. She came as someone who had known them for years. When the door opened, both of them understood instantly that the moment they had been avoiding had finally arrived. Laura didn't accuse. She simply said, "We know." The person's shoulders dropped, the weight of secrecy finally too heavy to carry. Tears welled in their eyes as they stepped aside to let Laura in. "I never meant it for it to go this far," they whispered. And in that moment, Laura realized something important. This wasn't just a story about power and control anymore. It was a story about how fear, pride, and misguided belief had led someone they trusted down a path they never thought they would take. And now, the entire future of Port Charles depended on what they chose to do next.